This program will inform and educate viewers on the underlying reasons behind many of today's grim and troubling events. You know what makes you mad? You know that there are bad things coming just over the horizon. You watch and listen to lots of podcasts and blogs that give their opinions on what's wrong and what's to come. But nobody is talking about what comes next.
Oh, I see the sign up there, Eric, but I don't see. Here I am. Hello, everyone. It is I, your Uncle Herbie, here for another week of live streaming. I hope this week finds you well. What are we talking about this week, Eric?
Well, we want to thank
Oh,
Pure
wait.
5. We want to thank Pure 5 this
Oh,
morning.
let's do that. Thank you, Pure 5 Extractions, for sponsoring this show. And I hope, let's go back to where I started because I'm completely, have to restart. Hi. Thank you, Pure 5 Extractions, for the best of everything and allowing us to do the show and providing us the ability to do so. And I hope all of you have had a great week. And after this rough start, let's do a good show. We're going to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. What's going on? And then I'm going to tell you why, as great as Trump is doing, even if he's successful, it's all going to come back unless we make a change. So let's talk about this piece by piece by piece. First of all the bitching and moaning you're hearing about, they're cutting. Let's start with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security because that's where all the blue hairs slash white hairs like me always get worked up because we paid into it, and that whole argument. And Donald Trump has said over and over and over again that he's not going to touch Social Security, and there's Elon Musk inside of Social Security announcing that we are paying benefits potentially to people that are 150 years old. So he's going to go through the Social Security rolls and weed out people that can't possibly be alive. And, that's like one person I think has lived to be about 120 in the world. So, it's extremely rare. So that we're paying benefits, even to people over 100 are highly unlikely. There's a lot of fraud. So, not to get semantic, but there's an enormous difference between cutting fraud and cutting a benefit. No one is, Trump is keeping his word. He's saying we're not going to cut Social Security in the sense that we're not going to cut any benefits. But that doesn't mean that he's not going to go in and find fraud, waste and abuse. And I think what's really going on, and it's going to become more and more apparent as time goes on, is that they're finding an enormous amount of waste, fraud, and abuse more than what they expected. They being the Doge people went into the government. The expectation was is they would find 10% waste, 10% fraud and abuse. It's turning out that about half the money the government spends is wasted or defrauded or abused. Now, when I say waste, fraud, and abuse, I don't necessarily mean that they're like driving their cars up to the door and then like loading money into the trunk and driving away, or even transferring it electronically in some nefarious way. You can you can commit you can be corrupt and make it look legal. Okay. So like the Biden family was expert at this. So what you basically do is you go to work for the government as a bureaucrat in a particular agency. Let's just, for the sake of this discussion, call it, well, what I've been discussing, the Social Security Administration. So you go to work in the Social Security Administration, which is just, I'm sure, as boring as it sounds. Pardon me, I have an itchy on my nose. Anyway, and you work there for 20 years and you get your pension, and then yay, you have your pension, yay, 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 yay. and then you retire, but you're still a young person. Maybe you went to work for the SSA out of college. You were 21. You worked 20 years. Now you're 41, 42. And now it's time to cash in and make the big bucks because you've got a pension already. And now what you're going to do is you're going to go to work for an NGO, a non-governmental organization. That's what an NGO stands for. If you've heard those, I know you've heard those initials, but a lot of times people are afraid, including me, to like raise your hand and say, I have no idea what an NGO is. So I'm just going to, I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence. I'm just trying to make it so you don't have to ask the question and feel silly. So NGOs, non-governmental organization. What these are entities that consult or provide management services or act as middle people. Why am I doing that? Middlemen, fuck this people shit. Everyone understands when I say men, I mean neutral. Okay, so let's just drop that from here heretofore. So, so you go to work for this NGO, and then you work for them, and you collect a lot of money, and you're making an extraordinary amount of money. And then you finish with them, and you go back into government as some major, political appointee by one of the two major parties up until Trump came along. And then you picked up some more experience, which you then recashed in by going into another NGO. And for every secretary of whatever it is, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Health and Human Services, there are undersecretaries and undersecretaries to them. And there's all kinds of political positions. There's about 50,000 of them. And depending on the party, they give these are patronage jobs. Patronage being, you're a loyal Democrat, you're a loyal Republican, and we're going to give you this job in return for being loyal. And then you get to milk it for all it's worth. So that's what's going on. People, and that's called first you single dip, then you double dip, then you triple dip. Sometimes they go to work for different agencies. So they might start with the Social Security Administration, and they get their retirement, but then they go to work for Health and Human Services, which is somewhat related anyway. And at the very same time, bureaucracy, what do they really do? This week I was amused to see that Elon Musk has sent out an email, evidently, to all federal employees saying in 5 lines or less. And again, if I'm wrong about this, I believe this is what it is. In 5 lines or less, tell us 5 things productive that you did last week. And boy, that's going to be a hard question for a lot of them to answer. Because if they don't reply, and I think it's by today, if I'm wrong on the details, guys, don't yell.
You're right. You're right. Or
It's by today, right?
it's today.
Okay, good. So if they don't reply by today, then they're going to be considered having resigned. So imagine that you're one of the 92% of government employees that are working from home. You're probably have either a second job or a business that you've started over the last 5 or 6 years. Let's see, COVID started in 2020. So over the last 5 years that you've been playing work at home, um, come on, guys, let's not pretend that everybody is, pure as the driven snow. Most of these people have found other things to make money while they're at home. So they're going to have one mother of a time justifying what they did last week. They're going to have to make up bullshit stories. Now, of course, the question comes: who's reading that question? Who's reading the answers of the supervisor, and who's reading the answers of the supervisor? Honestly, I don't know. But this is pretty much business turnaround 101. I used to be in the business turnaround business. That was redundant.
That was
I had
redundant.
a business turn. Yeah, it was really. I don't hear it until it comes out of my mouth. Anyway, I had a company. It was called HK Turnaround, and we did turnarounds of failing companies. And this is what we would do exactly this. We'd make people justify their jobs, and if they couldn't justify them, they were fired. When Elon Musk went into X, over the course of from the day he bought it to now, he has eliminated 80% of the people that were originally there, and yet X still works. In fact, it works better than it's ever worked, and it's actually profitable, and it's actually gaining. It's one of the most, it may be the most successful tech turnaround story ever. Because up until the time Elon Musk took it, it was never making money. It was just I don't know what the hell you'd call it. It was just a government subsidized propaganda factory. I don't know. But anyway, and by the way, people who bitch and moan and go on to these, blue sky or whatever these other things are, X is exactly, there's been studies done already. It's exactly balanced between left and right. I see plenty of people insulting each other. I wish, by the way, everybody would stop the trolling bullshit because I don't see really what good that does. I know that people really get enjoyment out of it. But anyway, back to the subject matter at hand. So they're not going to be able to do this. I'm not sure what's going to come in the coming week. I do know there's an awful lot of cuts. So let's just for a moment, and by the way, Democrats, I mentioned it a little bit last week. Let me just share this with you now. Stop defending the bureaucracy. People voted for Trump to be doing exactly what he's doing. Okay, stop. Your argument is people are losing their jobs. Well, the people losing their jobs are people that were producing nothing for what the taxpayers' money was paying them. And that's the I've used this word. I don't know another word to do it. Cavalier is the word I use. The cavalier attitude of the government and the political parties, the mainstream of the political parties towards the voters is just it's repulsive. I don't know any other way of putting it. It's just repulsive. So they say, well, it's just a rounding error. Yeah, right. 50 billion here and 50 billion there, and pretty soon you're talking some real money, as they say. So, believe it or not, when I was a kid, if you had $1 million, you were richer than shit. That's no kidding. That's just what inflation does. Inflation is this insidious thing. And as long as the economy grows faster than inflation and your income goes up faster than inflation, you don't really notice it. And because, your money's keeping up with it. But when it starts not, which is what's been going on under Biden, then eventually you're going to feel it. And that's what's going on now. This inflation that we have is not really a bad inflation. Not really. It's nothing like what's coming to an end finally in Argentina and what's going on in Venezuela. It's nothing like that. But it's the beginning of what could be like that if we don't get our hands on the spending. So Trump's whole thing is he's finding a tremendous amount and must of waste. And the Democrats' entire argument is you're putting bureaucrats out of jobs, which really, who gives a rat's fuck? When people say, what will the bureaucrat do after, for those of you who are perhaps over empathetic and you're worried, these people have homes, they have mortgages, da da da. What are they going to do? They're going to go get productive jobs instead of doing unproductive things. Instead of having a job where you can't possibly put down what you did productive last week because you didn't do anything productive last week or the week before or the week before. Be honest, those of you watching who work in the bureaucracy. And I'm not trying to pick on you, but maybe if you're a little unhappy in your life and you're feeling like you're not really where you want to be, maybe it's because you're doing something that provides no value. What you're doing lacks virtue. It's just taking money for doing what in your heart of hearts is nothing. You're just moving paper from point A to point B. Most bureaucrats have asked, what did you do productive last week? They would answer something like, I had 5 meetings regarding XYZ and 10 meetings regarding ABC, and I opened a panel to study XYZ and, all this other good stuff. And none of see, that's just all bullshit. You didn't make anything. You didn't facilitate a transaction. You didn't buy or sell property. You didn't reduce regulation. You increased regulation, which holds back business. You did nothing. If anything, not only are you not productive, but you're a carbuncle on our society. Don't you love that word, carbuncle? You know, I use these words like carbuncle. I'm aware that I
That's
do it. It
colorful.
always
It's
out of my mouth.
colorful.
It's
Carbuncle.
funny.
Is that with a K
Yeah,
or a
words
C?
like carbuncle is like a growth. It's like if you had a barnacle attached to your body, that would be a carbuncle. And boy, they can get really ugly. Not that I'm going to get into a discussion of carbuncles, but pardon me for using, I'm old fashioned. I use old fashioned words and they just work their way into my vocabulary. So anyway, I was talking about a carbuncle. Oh, so these people are nothing but a carbuncle, on our entire economy. And should you feel sorry for them? You know what? This has to happen. You, everybody needs to understand that one of the most dangerous things that we have somehow baked into our culture is the idea that you must be altruistic. That altruism means you must think of other people before yourselves. You must, in fact, this was the whole discussion about when J.D. Vance was pointing out um, the, I forget what the Latin term is. It's like the order. Well, anyway, it's the order of what should be important to you. So, first comes your family, then comes, and I'm doing this wrong. Okay, by the way, I'm just going to give you an example. You'll remember what I'm talking about. First comes family, then comes your neighbors, then comes the community, then comes your city, then comes your state, then comes the federal government, and then before everything, God, of course, if you're a believer. But the point of the matter is, people were getting their panties in a wad over priorities, because if your family comes first and your neighbor comes second, that means that you're not altruistic, you're self-serving. Well, guys, altruism is great if it makes you feel better to do it without anybody making you feel like you have to do it. In other words, if you're genuinely generous and you have the money to do it, and it's not causing any hardship to your family, and you feel like you'd like to donate money or time or both for something where you get no monetary return and no net improvement in your lifestyle, you're just doing it because you think it's the right thing to do, great. That's awesome. But if you're taking time, money away from your family to be altruistic, then you're a schmuck. Because if you act in your own self-interest, okay, and I guess I am kind of arguing for it. If you act in your own self-interest, you do more good for everybody, because you spend your money more efficiently and more logically, and that money goes into the system, and that system creates profits, and those profits create new jobs and new factories and new opportunities and more productivity. The fact of the matter is, capitalism works because it assumes that everybody acts in their own self-interest. To the extent that you're talked out of acting in your own self-interest, that's what socialism is. That's why people always say, well, it works on paper. Well, I can fly on paper, in theory, but, not really, not without an airplane. It's a lot of things are true. The reason socialism has never worked is because it's forced altruism. It's each according to their need, not according to their ability. And that sounds great, everybody gets what they need. But it's not great when you're taking it away from productive people. It's like, I'll give you a really good example. And we're going to use Uganda. Uganda is going to be the example we're using. Prior to um, when Idi Amin Dada became a dictator of Uganda, prior to that, there was a large Indian minority in Uganda. And by the way, the rest of Africa, all the way down to South Africa, too. I'm highlighting what went on because Uganda was the most stark example of what I'm about to say. But Indians were being persecuted in sub Saharan African countries pretty consistently. And why were they being persecuted? For the same reason Jews get persecuted in Western countries. They were too successful. And expatriated Indians are the Jews of Asia and Africa. So they went into, and I mean that as a complimentary statement, being Jewish myself, but they went into countries where they were not natives, and they were incredibly successful. And they opened factories, and they opened plantations, and they had huge exports, and they made a lot of money, and life was good. In fact, um, Mohandas Gandhi, who became Mahatma Gandhi, which is some sort of honorific title in Hinduism that I don't understand. But anyway, Gandhi was a lawyer, and I think it was South Africa, but it might have been Uganda, or it might have been Kenya. Anyway, he was a lawyer. He grew up to be a lawyer in these very same Indian communities in Africa. And what happened to him and what happened in Uganda is that, and this is later, Idi Amin Dada in Uganda, if those of you who don't remember him, he's the guy that seized the Israeli hostages, and the Arab terrorists landed at Entebbe airport, and Israel staged a very, very dramatic rescue because Uganda is nowhere near Israel, and got their hostages back and killed the Arab terrorists and yada yada yada. And the guy that was behind all of it or supporting all of it, and he looked like a clown, but he was one dangerous clown. Let me tell you, was this guy named Idi Amin Dada. And Idi Amin Dada was a Muslim and became the dictator of Uganda. And he was very popular because he told all of the native people of Uganda, look at the reason you're poor is these Indians have come to our country and they built the factories, and they bought our land, and they bought our production, and they're making you work for them, and you're not getting the rewards that they're getting, and they're getting rich while you're just sweating away day by day. And so, long story short, he seized all of their property and he exiled all the Indians. And then Uganda promptly fell into a depression that they never recovered from. Because what people always forget is that when you go to rob the rich to benefit the poor through altruistic reasons, no matter how good they are, you are basically taking away the most creative and productive people and replacing them with bureaucracy. And that doesn't work. Not ever. It's never worked. It never will work. And that brings me full circle back to where we are now. So what Trump and Elon Musk are doing is they're trying to do the opposite of what Idi Amin Dada did. They're trying to clear out all of the hidden fraud, waste, and corruption, which is about half the budget. Now, the government spends right now, the current federal budget is somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 to $8 trillion a year. A lot of money. So if let's say that 30%, let's say that my number, my dramatic number isn't right. Let's say it's less heinous. It's 30% instead of 50%, which is 10% more than what they were all, they being the mainstream parties. It's only 10% of this and only. If I ran a company where 20% of my money was going out the window to waste and fraud, I wouldn't be quite so lighthearted about it. Just saying. However, that's kind of the argument, and that 80% of the money goes to help people. But let's just say I'm wrong. It's only 30% waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay, it's always worse than what the government admits. So let's just pretend it's just a little worse, and it's 30%. Well, 30% of 7 trillion is 2.1 trillion, and 2.1 trillion erases our entire budget deficit without cutting a program. Do not confuse cutting the fat with cutting the meat. Okay, so it's when as they're laying off these thousands and thousands and thousands of bureaucrats, and you're going to see more and more sad stories. Those of you who are still clinging to your television sets as opposed to your smart screens, and are still clinging to watching, the NBC, ABC, or CBS News, CBS, who may not even exist by the end of the year. They've been caught so many times manipulating facts, but I digress. You might still think that anyone really gives a shit. But the truth of the matter is, Trump and Musk and all the little dojites under them, and yes, they're very young because creativity works better when your mind is flexible and not crowded with all the bullshit that we download into ourselves over the course of, let's say, in my case, a nearly 70-year life. So not quite. I'll be 68 in May, just to share. So here we are. So let's just say for a moment, and for a happy moment, that it's all successful, that they cut $2 trillion of waste out. They renewed the tax cuts. They eliminate regulation. And if all that were to happen, or anything that resembles it in reasonable resemblance, I'm a fountain of being redundant today, Eric. I am a fountain of redundancy.
Yeah, you
I
are.
just keep repeating,
Spillage.
you know,
It's
well,
overflow.
you know, again, I have to blame Pure 5 and their extractions. That's all I'm saying. Hmm. I mean that with love, guys, with love. So, what was I talking? Oh, so let's say that Elon is successful and Trump is successful and all this is done, yada, yada, yada. We've eliminated that. We will go into a golden age. We'll have growth way in excess of 5%. Unemployment will plummet, and inflation will go away because the government will be spending much, much less money on non-productive sources. One of the things that our government does, and all governments do, is when they calculate gross domestic product, GDP, you've heard those initials many times, they include government spending in those calculations. And that's, for example, how the Chinese are still showing 5% growth when their economy is in a depression underneath it, the private economy. The answer is they're covering it up with government spending. See, to me, that's wrong. I don't think government spending, whether it's Chinese or American or Russian or German or French or whatever, should ever show up in GDP calculations because it's incredibly misleading. The thought is that the government is spending money on things that improve things like needed infrastructure. But the truth is, most of it, they're pissing away to their cronies. So this money ends up in circulation. And when it ends up in circulation, that becomes a lot of money, too much money chasing goods. Since everyone's spending their time producing nothing, everyone in the bureaucracy and so many other people besides, producing absolutely nothing. This is money that ends up chasing goods, but there's not enough goods because there's not enough production because there's too much waste. And that drives up the price of everything because prices soak up excess money like a sponge soaks up excess water. But again, I keep saying this. Now I'm going to really go to my point. Let's say that it's all successful and we're out of this and we're doing great. Well, here's what we know historically. The American people and any people in a successful, this is why successful countries end up in decadence and fall, is they forget everything they did to get where they're going. They just, like, we have completely forgotten the legacy of the Puritans and the Pilgrims and the religion and social structure. And all those things that we now laugh at were actually the things that built the country. And then we got to be fat, dumb, and happy, and we tossed them out without thinking. And we ended up in the mess we're in. And now Trump is coming along and he's trying a reset. And I think that, I'm hoping that he's successful doing it, but it's doomed to return to the way it was, because as soon as the great man is gone, and the great man is almost 80, he's going to be gone, just like I know I'm going to be gone. All of us are going to be gone at some point. But, some people have a longer horizon than others. It's just the reality of life. You might as well accept it. When the great man is gone, the question is, will this culture continue? And it might for a while. Maybe someone like J.D. Vance, or maybe the Democrats get their heads on straight and they realize that what they ought to do is throw out the progressives and embrace the libertarians and become a new classical liberal party and completely redefine what it means to be a Democrat, so they have a reason for being a party without an ideology, a party without. If I said to you, what do Republicans stand for? What do conservatives stand for? You would be able to say to me, they stand for family, they stand for faith, they stand against abortion. There are a number of issues that you can, and all of it is rooted in a fundamental ideology, which is rooted in Judeo Christian values, traditional Judeo Christian values. Okay. So, but progressivism, by and large, rejects the idea of religion in general, and it makes a moral. Therefore, it loses all sense of morality and judgment, which is why they can make Islam sound like a religion of peace when it's not. Okay, in other words, it creates false comparisons. When you don't say good is good and bad is bad, you get bullshit. Okay, in order to make a rational decision, you have to look at things objectively, and to look at things objectively, you have to be honest with yourself and everybody else. The problem with progressives are that they believe propaganda. It's progressivism is a cult. It's become its own religion unto itself, but it's a religion of decadence because it has no boundaries. You can even choose your own sex. It's just absurd. So what I suggest to the Democrats is that, and I said this last week, but I'll just say it again, you guys need to embrace the libertarians. That's your natural market right there, and become the Jeffersonians and Jacksonians. And I'm not going to go into an historic explanation. You guys can just look that up. But come the Jeffersonians and the Jacksonians, the founders of your party, the great Democrats of the past. You can embrace that libertarian. What we now call libertarian is classically liberal. Okay, it's John Locke. It's classic liberalism. That's where you Democrats have to go, because right now with progressivism, you have no ideology other than more, 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 more. That kind of reminds me of, Eric. What was that movie with the seagulls? It was a cartoon movie. It was animated, and the seagulls were always flying around going mine, 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 mine.
Oh,
What
I
was
don't
that movie?
remember. I don't remember that.
Was that the Little Mermaid? Was that the Little Mermaid?
I
The
don't.
original, the cartoon one, or was that Nemo? Anyway, it was one of those movies, and I don't. Do you remember this? Where the seagulls, instead of it was always mine, 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 mine. That's the Democrats. Okay, mine, 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 mine. You can't take mine, 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 mine. That's not a philosophy. That's parasitism. Okay, you're just trying to take from everybody and not do anything for it. That's not going to work. So I'm just suggesting. Anyway, back to the point at hand. Both sides ultimately will become decadent because success breeds decadence. Pride goeth before a fall. So if Trump works, his very success will be the undoing of everything that he's done. Just like before him, the Reagan Revolution was largely undone by Barack Obama, and then his successor, Joe Biden, with a small break, and Trump won. Trump two is a whole different game. History's going to write there was Trump one, and then there was Trump two, radically different. But in terms of competence and execution, it's like he learned something, which I don't want to digress. I could go in. That was going to be a digression right there, Eric. I was about to digress into Trump analysis, and that was just dumb. Okay, I'm controlling myself. So what we're going to talk about now is, oh, Eric, it was Finding Nemo. Eric just gave me a message, and he also reminded me that we have to take a commercial break. So we're live streaming. I forgot. Here we are. I'm having such a good time talking to you guys. Stand by. We're going to go away for a couple of minutes, and I'll be right back.
Ready to take your craft to the next level? Imagine faster extractions, purer products, and more profits. Sounds good, right? At Pure 5 Extraction, we've revolutionized cannabis extraction with our game-changing technology. No solvents, no heat, just the cleanest, most natural process on the market. Whether you're a boutique grower or a large-scale operation, Pure 5 has the tools to elevate your business worldwide. Visit pure5extraction.com today. Pure 5 Extraction, because your plants.
Window tint isn't just about keeping a low profile anymore. Introducing XPEL Prime XR Plus, the most technologically advanced automotive window film ever created. Prime XR Plus features multi-layer nanoparticle technology designed to provide unrivaled performance. The unique multi-layer construction blocks up to 98% of infrared heat, keeping your vehicle's interior cool no matter the weather. Prime XR Plus also provides superior UV rejection so you and your passengers stay safe from harmful cancer-causing rays. In the past, the only option was installing a darker shade. With Prime XR Plus, you can reap the benefits from our lightest tint to our darkest without compromising performance for visibility. With a digital world, clear communication is key. Unlike other high IR blocking window films, Prime XR Plus won't interfere with cell, radio, or data signal transmissions. Performance at its best. It's prime time. XPEL Prime XR Plus. Ask for it by name today.
Ugh, this air conditioner isn't working again. I'm roasting in here.
Hi there. I'm from Canaloo Air. I'm here to fix your air conditioner.
Canaloo Air is a family-owned HVAC company that specializes in residential air conditioning and heating. We offer a variety of services, including installation, replacement, repair, and maintenance. Canaloo Air. We keep your home comfortable all year round. Call us today for a free quote. Why Canaloo Air? Here are the top 5 reasons. Family-owned and operated. We are committed to high-quality service. Our technicians use the highest quality parts and equipment. The business is a member of the Home Advisor Elite Service Award program. And finally, we have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Visit our website, canilooair.com, or call us today, 602-609-3480, to schedule an appointment.
No dudes and dudettes, we are back from our various commercials. I can now almost do those by heart. They really should, Eric, I'm telling you, you should get a hold of them. I should do the voiceovers. Those AIs, I don't know. I do not care for AI voice. Maybe I'm just an old boomer. I don't know. But what do I know? I literally, by the way, will block a YouTube channel where it's AI voice. I can't stand it. Anyway, Eric, are you there or am I just talking to
Yeah,
myself?
I'm here.
Oh,
You
okay.
talk to
You
him.
seem You seem chill. Where was I
I'm
before we
chill.
went away for break? Oh, I was about to go into how to keep the success after we've gained it. So let's just say for a moment that, regardless of what happens politically, that what Trump is doing now is successful. And he and Musk cut away a tremendous amount of fat and waste and abuse. And we at the very least improve the trajectory of the debt against, in other words, we're spending less and less interest, which will cause interest. I don't want to go into the fine points. I could really digress into economics, and that just everybody makes your eyes roll back in your head. It's like, oh God, there he goes. So I'm not going to go into that. But the bottom line is, let's say he's successful. Well, to stop it from happening again, let us now review a radical reset. Now, I wrote a book called A Radical Reset. It's available to you on Amazon. You can download it on your Kindle. You can get the book itself. And in A Radical Reset, I outline as a new way of government called anti-politism, which is the very fact that I came up with a new way of doing a republic makes me megalomaniacal and silly, but in fact, I thought this up. And I thought this up years ago as how do we stop ourselves from doing it? That's up long enough, Eric. They see it. Okay, let's come back to my beautiful face. Oh, look how beautiful. No, just kidding. Um, you get to a stage in life, guys, where you just don't care anymore. You get to the point where it's like, okay, I'm old. Okay, so um, anti-politism is democracy by lottery. It's a republic by lottery. It's not really a democracy, it's a republic. Democracy only means government by the people. So my first requisite when I thought about anti-politism was, how do I maintain a democratic government where it's government by the people, not to the people? You know, in other words, the government isn't allowing you to do things, you're allowing the government to do things. How do I guarantee that? And how do I guarantee that people feel like they have skin in the game, that they're participating? And the answer is to set up a series of screens but make it available to everyone. Screens, in other words, are kind of like sifting. If you went out to pan for gold, and you were at, I've just, by the way, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I once, with my kids and I and my then wife, we panned for gold. It's somewhere up near Reno. I want to say on the, I forget what the name of the river was. Anyway, it was fun. And what you do is you just swoosh it around and you get rid of all the dirt. And the gold is heavier than the silt and all the other crap that's in the stream. And then theoretically, you keep screening it and screening it and screening it, and eventually you get down to the gold. And then they have these commercial things in the mines. Particularly, I don't know what they do today, but in the old days, back when the prospectors were in the gold rush, they would have like steps down like water steps, and then each step would have finer and finer screens, and the screens would filter out the silt, and then at the end you got the gold. Again, I don't know exactly what the mechanics of it are because I'm not an engineer, but I've got the basics right. Well, anti-politician does the same thing with citizens of the United States. Number one, you have to be a citizen of the United States. Number two, you have to be 35 years of age or older. Why 35 years of age? Well, that's arbitrary. It could just as easily be 45, but it shouldn't be any younger. If you don't have any gray hair, you don't have to have as much as I do. But if you haven't made some horrendous mistakes, you should not be making decisions for anybody else. Notice that I didn't say tremendous successes. I said tremendous mistakes, because good decisions come from experience, but experience comes from bad decisions. So until you've had enough time in your life to do what we have all done and made a series, now I've made worse than most, but to one extent or another, everybody makes stupid decisions. Theoretically, at least, you learn from those decisions, and then the people that learn from them the best climb higher on the ladder of success. So the first thing is you got to have a few years under your belt so that you have some experience of making terrible decisions, so you know what a terrible decision looks like. Number two, it doesn't matter if you're male or female or what your race or religion is. That's completely eliminated. There's none of that kind of crap. So we don't have to get into it. Number three is, if you have a college degree, you are eligible from any accredited college. Now, if you don't have a college degree, when I say eligible, you're eligible to serve. I'll explain that in a minute through the lottery system. So anyone with a bachelor's degree or better is eligible. Anyone who is an entrepreneur who has not necessarily gone to college, not most, but a lot of, I don't know if it might be most. I've never looked at a study of that, to be perfectly honest. But a lot of entrepreneurs don't have the wiring to go through school and regurgitate. You know, what is a person with a PhD? There are many outstanding ones, by the way. I don't mean to insult anybody. But like everything else, most people at any job are just average. And most people who call themselves Dr. This, like Dr. Jill, who aren't an MD, aren't necessarily great. They're just who could cough up enough regurgitated stuff that the professors who were teaching them recognized as their own and said it was brilliant. And then, the rest is history. It doesn't make them smart. But anyway, any degree. Okay, an entrepreneur, on the other hand, a lot of them just say, like, Bill Gates never finished college, Jeff Bezos never finished college, Elon Musk never finished college. I think that's true. Hey, Eric, double check on that.
I'll check. I'll check.
Yeah, I'm not absolutely positive. I don't think he did, but it's very, very typical with entrepreneurs that they don't finish college because they're just too busy. So we definitely want those people included in eligibility to serve in government. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, if you've started a business and you have 10 or more employees and you've been in business for 5 years or longer, you become eligible to participate. Now, you'll understand participation in a minute. But understand that the reason it's for 5 years or longer is, as an entrepreneur myself, I know that for the first 5 years of a new business, they're pretty shaky, and nobody wants to pull people out of their new business and destroy it to make them serve like a draft. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a lottery, not a draft, which I'll explain again in more detail in a minute. So the bottom line is that I don't want to hurt anybody's business. We don't want to hurt anybody's business. So that's that. The other reason for 10 or more employees is simply that if you've met a payroll, you know not to do stupid things with payroll taxes. Again, meeting a payroll is something that is very eye opening as an entrepreneur. You realize why the rich get rich because of the unbelievable stress and aggravation they go through early on to grow whatever their, respective businesses might be. But anyway. So that's another way. So college degree or entrepreneur with successful business with enough employees. The third way to get in to the lottery is to be. It doesn't matter if you went to college, and it doesn't matter if you started a business, but you're in the top third of income earners, which basically says that you are not just average. You have climbed the corporate ladder. You have done what needs to be done. You understand how to network. You understand how to play well with others. You understand these are all skills. Everyone's bringing different skills to the table. The entrepreneurs bring mostly creativity and organizational skills. The people that climb the ladder, the way I'm talking about, understand the importance of structure. You just can't be a cowboy all the time. They know how to work within an organization. They know how to, as I said, play well with others. And the ones, well, college educated just means at least you could finish what you started. It's actually the least of the requirements. Not, I shouldn't have started with it. That should be the last way to get in, frankly. It's the least of it. But instead of having these weird gerrymandered congressional districts all over the country, and by the way, anti-politism in the book, I'm speaking about it only at the federal level. Whether or not states want to do it is completely up to them. And the reason that I'm more cavalier, I keep using that word cavalier. The reason I'm less worried about what states do is that states can't print money. And if you can't print money, that limits how badly you can screw up. In other words, California is in terrible shape, but they're not nearly as in bad a shape as they would be if they were allowed to print up California bucks. Can you even imagine what their deficits would look like if they had a Federal Reserve just for California and what a debt filled disaster like Venezuela that would be? Okay, would anyone care to debate that with me? So but states can't do that. And because they can't do that, they're much less dangerous. Therefore, states can run under the old system, can use anti-politism if they wish. That's up to the individual states. But at the federal level, this is the system that exists. And what anti-politism does simply is convert ambition into duty. And you'll understand why in a minute. So instead of having these weird gerrymandered congressional districts, Elon Musk earned 2 bachelor's degrees from the University of Pennsylvania. See, I knew I was going to be wrong. I didn't know, but I felt. University of Pennsylvania, by the way, is not Penn State. That's two different things. University of Pennsylvania, I believe it's the oldest Ivy League institution, even older than Harvard in Philadelphia. One of my oldest and dearest friends is a retired doctor in Philadelphia. He went to University of Pennsylvania, and that's where he met his wife, and she went to the university. That's why I know about it. But anyway, neither here nor there. So thank you, Eric, by the way. So instead of these, you know how it is in whatever state you're in. They have these districts shaped like fish hooks and pies and moons and stars. There's all kinds. Some of them are really teeny. Some of them are really huge. It's all done depending on who controls the state legislature to give an advantage to their party in federal elections. That's called gerrymandering. In anti-politism, since there are no political parties in anti-politism because there are no elections. This is democracy by lottery. This is republic by lottery. Because of that, there's no need to have political parties because there's going to be no campaigns and there's going to be no spin and there's going to be no propaganda. Okay, I mean, there might be propaganda, but it won't be generated by a political organization. There's always propaganda. Consequently, what goes on is we can then take the population of the state. So let's say a state like, I don't know, my state probably has 10 million people, give or take. And it has, I believe, 9 congressional districts. I might be wrong. Um, we'll get to the speed mark, Eric. Eric is making me hustle up. Okay, so let's go fast. So you divide it up equally. Everyone would get a number. If you were eligible, let's say there were 1 million people living in one of those districts, and half of them fell through, into the categories that I named earlier, then everyone in that group would get a number from 1 through however many there are, and then there would be a lottery, and whoever's number came up would in fact be the congressperson from that district for the next 4 years. You know what? As I'm doing this, you're right, Eric. This is getting too long. Here's here's the essence. I was going to explain the whole thing, but I'm going to leave you to get the book. Get a Radical Reset, available at Amazon. It's much simpler when I write it all out. Having said that, here's what anti-politism and why it's the best system moving forward. Because by eliminating political parties, you eliminate ambition, and by eliminating ambition, you eliminate most corruption. Instead of it being corruption to keep an office and therefore willing to do favors and basically crawl on the ground on your belly like a reptile to please your donors, in an anti-political system, there would be no donors. Therefore, that wouldn't have to happen. Plus, everybody would be there because they've done something with their lives. And in fact, rational people of a certain age and a certain amount of experience begin to all see the world through a much more objective rather than subjective lens. People, the older you get, the more you see that there are certain objective realities that cannot be changed. Okay, pick up your copy of A Radical Reset. I'm going to stop there. Eric, you want to play lightning round?
Yeah, let's go for it. All right. Get you a
Okay, I'm
drink,
ready.
freshen up. How about this?
I'm
We'll start with
I'm all fresh.
the Maine, the state of Maine governor, the remarks, see you in court.
Okay, so I don't know how many lawsuits are being filed now. First of all, let's get to the basis of the lawsuits, then I'll go right to Maine. Quickly, but what's people who are representing the bureaucracy in one form or another are trying to claim that only the Congress can lay off federal employees, which is all these lawsuits are going to fail except for one. And the reason they're all going to fail, and I'll say the one in just a minute, is all of them are asserting that Congress has more power than the president over the federal bureaucracy. But the Constitution is very clear that the entire federal bureaucracy is governed by the executive branch. And the executive branch has a sole and unitary executive called the President of the United States. And anyone that he or she delegates to do the jobs through their cabinet or through consultants like Elon Musk is perfectly legal and perfectly straightforward. And yes, people did vote for Elon Musk because it wasn't exactly a secret what Trump was going to do while he was running, just saying. And therefore, um, they're all going to fail. The one suit that's going to succeed, I think, is the birthright citizenship. I think Trump's going to lose on that. I might be wrong. I'm not telling you whether I think it's good, bad, or otherwise. I just think in the end, I've read the 14th Amendment. I know what Trump is arguing. I see the ambiguity in it. I could easily be wrong. I'm not a lawyer. I'm obviously not a judge. But it seems to me that if he's going to lose one, that's going to be it. All the rest, he's going to win because as the executive, he is absolutely allowed to do what he's doing. And it's going to get even more severe, if that's the right word, from the standpoint of progressives and people that support the bureaucracy. Because the other thing that's going to be found constitutional is he doesn't have to spend every dollar appropriated. Okay, he can impound money. And if the executive, and who ever heard of an executive that has to spend, even that alone is stupid on its face. You haven't spent 100 billion, you better spend it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
It's just
Okay.
okay.
Let's
So anyway,
keep going.
back to the governor of Maine. The governor of Maine has her answer was, so Trump said, we're ordering all the states and localities to cooperate with us with ICE on these raids to round up all these illegals, yada yada yada. And he starts talking about, if there's no compliance, there's going to be consequences. And then Trump, it occurs to him that Maine is one of the states giving him a pain in the ass. So he says, it's the governor of Maine in the room. And she happened to be because it was some sort of governor's conference thingy that they were doing. And he said to her, "Are you going to comply with the law?" And she replies, "Are you going to comply?" And she says, "I'm going to comply with all state and federal laws." And Trump says, in the way that only Trump can say it, basically he does the Sylvester
I am the
Stallone
law, the
line
law
from Judge
won.
Dredd, "I am the law. I am the law." Anyway, he did say that. And he's kind of right. He is the law when it comes to the executive branch. So, are you going to comply? And if they don't comply, then he's going to hold off their federal funds under the rules of impoundment, which is what I was just talking about. So it's very, very interesting what's going on. Basically, he slapped her down. And Maine is a state that's very unusual. There almost everybody outside of what there are no big cities in Maine. The only reason I know anything about Maine is that years and years ago I went to summer camp in Maine at Camp Belgrade, which is near Waterville, which is on the Belgrade Lakes. And so I spent some time up there, and I just remember Maine to be a beautiful, beautiful place. But they're pretty conservative outside of the big cities. But anyway, that's that. So that's what I have to say about that one, Eric. Let's go to the next one.
All right. Germany, the election polls.
Oh, okay. So they're voting today. And just as we were starting to record our show, I saw that it looks like the center right, as it's described by the mainstream media, the center right party, the Christian Democrats, are going to win the election. And in second place is going to come the AFD. The AFD is the alternative for Germany, which in German would be Alternative für Deutschland. So AFD, Alternative for Deutschland. So anyway, um, and they're being characterized as a far right party. That's what the mainstream in Europe, just like the mainstream in the United States, is way off to the left, and they think they're in the center. This is their problem. They delude themselves into believing extreme views or centrist views, when in fact the general public doesn't view the AFD as far right. They view the AFD as just conservative, and they view the Christian Democrats as center or even center left because they played ball with people like Angela Merkel for so long. And I don't want to get into the fine points of German politics, but let me say that the guy who leads the Christian Democrats, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. I think it starts with an F, but I could be wrong. Anyway, maybe an S. I can't remember. Anyway, he's going to have to try to form a coalition. None of them are going to get an outright majority. This is parliamentary democracy, not like we have. And because of that, they're going to have to cobble together a coalition. And he has said he will never, ever form a coalition with the AFD. Now, which he, by the way, just like they do Trump in the United States, equates with being Nazis, and they're not. And believe me, I would tell you as a nice Jewish boy if I thought they were, but they're not. Having said that, Germans have an incredible sensitivity towards that, understandably so. So, what will probably, if the mainstream is right, then the Christian Democrats will form a coalition with the Social Democrats, which is the party is getting creamed right now, or the Greens, depending on how the votes come out, and form a centrist coalition, which is really the status quo. Well, you know, I think that would be an enormous mistake. I think if the Christian Democrat has a brain in his head, he'll retract what he said. He'll suddenly find that the leader of the AFD, who's a woman, by the way, I can't think of her name, but the leader of the AFD is suddenly going to be his best friend. He's going to form a center right coalition because if he doesn't do that, Germany is going to go the way of Hungary and Poland and Romania, which is basically to say they're going to end up with what other people are going to think are far right governments, and all this mainstream is going to get swept away. This is the last hope for what's left of the mainstream in Germany to cling on to any power at all. That's what I think.
All
And I
right.
think that in the end, the right's going to take it. Let's go on to the next thing.
All right. So, will the Pope's health have any economic impact?
No. Um, the Pope's help. I'm not a fan of this Pope, but then again, I'm not a Catholic. But if I were a Catholic, I would not be happy with this Pope. He's basically a communist. And I'm not saying that because I throw that word around a lot, but there's a strain within the Catholic Church of activist Catholicism, particularly in Latin America and maybe in Africa, but I know in Latin America. And consequently, he's one of those. He comes from Argentina. He's one of those leftist Catholics, and the church would be better off without him. That now, again, all of you Catholics, please, like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm the first to concede it. I'm operating on a little bit of knowledge, which is a dangerous thing, and I don't pretend. Look, if you think he's a great pope, then he's a great pope. But from a political point of view, he is a pain in the ass. And from my personal point of view, I think he's an anti-Semite, which really colors my judgment about him. But he's been consistently basically fondling the gonads of Hamas. So I'm not a fan.
All
I'm
right.
sorry. Well, I'm not. I don't even care. I'm going to be honest. I don't care one way or the other. If the guy lives or dies, I'm not going to wish him death because that would ruin my own karma. But I really don't care if he lives because I think that he's a detriment overall. But on the other hand, I would never be I would never put myself in a position to judge someone's worth as a human being and the right to live over their politics. So I don't know. But no, it's
Okay.
not going to cause anything at all.
All right. So we got about 3 minutes left. Let's speed them up. Social Security for the 2026, the cost of living adjustment, the COLA, and the result of inflation.
Okay, so as a person who collects Social Security, I can tell you that the increase this year was less than the rate of inflation, a lot less. I'm not complaining, but it's just a lot less than the rate of inflation, and that's going to there's two ways to calculate inflation. There's the official number that's published, but that number tends to be distorted because they're constantly monkeying around with the things that are in the. There are a basket of goods. How inflation is calculated is the government randomly picks a basket of goods. So let's say cars and mattresses and refrigerators and food and oil and all kinds of things. Now, what they can do to manipulate the number is remove or put back in various parts of that basket to manipulate the inflation. And the Biden administration was very aggressive about this and took out key parts of it. So the inflation that we think is around 3% is probably higher. That's number one. Number two, it's not a hyperinflation by a long shot, but yes, if Trump finds all this waste and Social Security is saved without reforming it, he'll go down as the favorite president of old people. But I don't think that's likely. Sooner or later, Social Security is going to have to be reformed, but it's not going to happen by 2026. Next subject.
All right, last one.
Right.
Brittany Griner,
Okay.
gay baby jail note in her hotel room.
Yeah. Brittany Griner wins the award for least, what's the word I'm looking for? Least appreciative, least humble, least decent. I mean, that poor, first of all, she gets moved to the head of the line by Biden because she's a black woman and a gay black woman, which is like the trifecta if you're Biden, which is probably all that clouded mind could understand. So he jumps that poor guy who starts with an R, I can't think of it, but who was stuck there for a decade, gets her out ahead of time, trades for a murderer, for Christ's sake, and gets her out, and she's like she's anti-American. She's still anti-American. She behaves I personally, she's going to go the way of Kanye West. That's what I think. I hope. I find her despicable. How about that? Is that a good word? Despicable.
All
Not a
right,
fan.
that's a wrap.
Is that a wrap?
That's a
Now that
wrap.
I've ended by calling Brittany Griner despicable, I've never met her. She might be the nicest person in the world. When I was married to my ex-wife, Terry, she would always, whenever I would, state, as I often do, an opinion, a lot of people don't understand. I hope you guys understand this. My opinions are subject to change. I think to have a healthy mind, you have to be open to what other people are saying. And to be open to what other people are saying, you have to be willing to change your mind. So, my mind will change. So what I share with you week to week is what I believe week to week, but that doesn't mean that I'm so married to it that I won't admit when I'm wrong. But all of that said, I think Brittany Griner's a real PCOS. Anyway, I've kept the swearing down this week. Have you noticed that, Eric? Have you noticed that I have not thrown the F bomb? Have I thrown the F bomb at all today? I don't think so.
No, you did well today.
Oh,
Did well.
oh, good. Well, God forbid, like my grandson would turn in or something, tune in. I wouldn't want him to hear his grandpa, Anyway, you guys have a terrific week. We're at the end of the show. Have a terrific week. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for streaming. Tell your friends. Stream next week. Same time, same place next week. I hope that every day is a prosperous day and a healthy day, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And may the